Hey there, YouTube land, and today is a video response to a really good friend of mine, Dina DVD, who did basically a WTF is wrong with modern horror films. And it was probably one of my more favorite videos that I watched recently. It was really well done and really well put together. And so, me being a horror fan, I wanted to kind of do a video response to tell him I was going to do one, and kind of give my thoughts on it. So, first off, what I want to go with first is something that bothered me, and it wasn't by him, but it was actually by an online web thing that we got to go to, which is the Urban Dictionary definition of what a jump scare is. According to the Urban Dictionary, it's a tactic used in horror movies to scare people. The jump scare is used by unmatched filmmakers as a cheap method of frightening the audience. The jump scare is used by every horror filmmaker out there. It's just Urban Dictionary is taking one aspect or one version of the jump scare. The NDVD talks about dread and kind of like the building of suspense in a film, which is completely and utterly true. However, that's all part of how you get there. A lot of modern day films really overuse it. They'll have fake out jump scares all over the place, so that basically when an actual scary thing happens, you're pretty desensitized to it. However, an actual real jump scare that's done and paced well actually helps the film, and it can actually put you into the story. John Carpenter's Halloween, which you mentioned, is one of them that does use the jump scare. In actuality, it's probably where the whole name came from, because everybody is entitled to one good scare, and we get that when Laurie bumps into the police officer near the beginning of the film. It's not. It's kind of a little kind of a jump thing, but it's also a sort of predicting what's to come and kind of her mood set. And there's a lot of films that do that well. Not a lot of films do it well, but there's enough that do it well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some horror films of the last few years. Some are good, some are not, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on the state of horror modern day as is. So we're going to go through a few films here. Basically, I picked a bunch of stuff at random. Some are good films, some are not good films, and I'll tell you why I think each one works or doesn't work. And remember, horror isn't just boo, scare type of thing. There's horror, like many other genres, is very fragmented into a lot of different categories. People nowadays, me included, will say, what's happened to the horror genre? I can't believe this happened. And I'll see stuff like Rob Zombie's Halloween, which doesn't get it at all. And I'm like, and then I get nervous because I'm like, people, if this is what people grow up with and think Halloween is, we're doomed, because no, I want to see like good filmmaking. But and then I see other things, and that's what we're going to talk about actually. So first up, with a couple of DVDs here, is one that a lot of people wouldn't think of as a horror film, but it is a horror film. It's a character study horror film. It's a much slower burn of a horror film, but it's a horror film nonetheless, and it's in that genre. And it's a little movie called The Battery. The Battery does take a slow progression type of thing. The only type of, I guess, really jump scary thing that happens in the film, if you want to go with like that aspect of it, is something that turns into a tragic, comedic, just, if you ever wondered what it would actually might be like to be in a zombie apocalypse, and like to actually get behind, like, these are two people, and it actually goes into the loneliness that will be felt being survivors in this aspect. And it really delves into that. There's one scene where a attractive female zombie comes towards the car, and you'd think this is where he jump up or he stab her or she go after him. But what happens is actually kind of shocking and kind of sad. But it is. It's kind of meant to be. It's not really meant. It's slightly humorous, but more than anything else, it's a sad thought on the state of exactly how he's feeling at this point. Nobody. Check it out. every time I wonder what happened to the modern day slasher film, I feel a little happy when I think about Adam Green. Hatchet and Hatchet 2, not so much Hatchet 3, were actually really good examples of a modern day slasher being created and actually doing a kind of a franchise type of thing. The Hatchet movies are really fun. They're really cheesy. There's lots of gore, and there's lots of these jump scares. Are they meant to scare you? No, they're not really meant to scare you. They're meant for you to have fun with. And as for that slasher film, it's in good hands. Comedic horror. Some people find this one a little uneven. I thought this was hilarious. It's Wolf Cop. Fun little, very inexpensive. Like, this is an indie horror thing, and for an indie horror one, I gotta be honest, the effects were actually pretty good. You gotta remember this was done for very, very little money here in Canada. Pretty sure this is Canadian from everything I see about it, and it was just a really fun little film, and I felt pretty good while I watched it. Sequels. People always talk about sequels after sequel after sequel and how it waters down or ruins the story. And after watching a few, this one here, Curse of Chucky, has kind of a gothic type of feel to it. The cinematography in this is incredible. The scene at the beginning where the first murder happens, the reflection in the blood, it's just really well done. And it has I'm going to say it has a Jacques Tourneur type of feel to it in many of its scenes. So as far as sequels go, this was so well done, and is probably the best out of all these Child's Play films since the first one. It's up there. What's saving horror a lot nowadays is the modern day, like, foreign films. Foreign films, you find your best horror in a lot of the foreign stuff. Let the Right One In is a fantastic example of a modern day vampire film. It's really different. It's really unique. Of course, the United States had to go and remake it right afterwards because they can't read subtitles. And that wasn't a bad remake overall. But I did love the original just a little bit more. I do like the fact that the young, what's her name, Chloe Grace Moretz got her start with that one. But this is actually a really good, really atmospheric, kind of a slow burn, kind of a dread feel that you want. You want to find like the dread type of stuff, then look for ones like Let the Right One In. That's and a guy that I always talk about and complain about is Rob Zombie. The one time that Rob Zombie tried to make a film that was different, and he tried to make a film that was more like the 70s style, not just ripping off the 70s style, which he'd done in all of his other films, where he just, cribbed stuff from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all this stuff, and just put like a bunch of crap on the screen and hope that it went okay. He did Lords of Salem. This is really different. This is not for everyone. This is really weird, and but it is pretty much the whole Dunfield horror type of like early 70s satanic cultish type of thing. Is this for everyone? No, not at all. But if you're a fan of the earlier 70s style of filmmaking, and you can take kind of the esoteric, kind of like not quite sure what's going on, the whole Rosemary's Babies type of style, that's what he's going for there. And he's not successful completely, but he's more successful than he has been in his other films. This actually shows that he has talent that goes beyond the films that he's made before. As much, I'll talk about, I had fun with House of a Thousand Corpses. I enjoyed Devil's Rejects. They're pretty cookie cutter as far as movies go, just throwing in stuff here and there. I found that this film actually had a bit more of a voice and a bit more of a bite for me. Again, I'm probably one of the lesser people that, well, not lesser people, I'm one of the only people that thinks that on this one here. But I grew up in the time when these films were actually around. A lot of the people that are fans of Rob Zombie that are watching stuff and like talking about how brutal and stuff it is and how much it's like the 70s, they're kind of seeing it secondhand. This is actually what that style of film, the style of film that Rob Zombie's been trying to make all these years. This is it. The other ones that he's been lauded for, not so much. Evil Dead. What do I say? A remake that went, reboot, sequel, something. What did I think of this? I actually really enjoyed it. I thought that it was well paced, and actually the reason for getting him up to the cabin works better for me than, hey, let's just go up to this random cabin type of thing. This one here, they have a reason for going up there. Our lead, spoiler alert, switches over halfway through the film, and kind of throws you for a loop, which is good. So if you went in like me, trying to stay pretty blind to the whole thing, and actually went in pretty much hating the idea of them making a new Evil Dead, I actually really did enjoy this. And the whole like tree rape scene was seemed less exploitive in this film here than it was in the original one. It went for a different mode with it, and I actually kind of liked that. I know that's like a classic scene, but the fact that he went with a different way with it and kind of eerier. Now let's talk about something done really, really wrong, and that is A Nightmare on Elm Street. This, Dean, is the type of stuff that you're talking about. This is unimaginative crap. Nightmare on Elm Street is a series that was based on, well, the original one was based on like basically getting behind the scenes of suburbia and what really goes on behind those doors. The creator, Wes Craven, had seen a man walking down the street when he was young. He'd read a story about some people that were killed in their dreams, and he thought of this really imaginative story. Now, when they decided to remake this, he casted Jackie Earle Haley. It was a great choice for the role. However, they decided that they were going to go more realistic with the burn scar thing, which actually kind of takes away from the fact that of his kind of like almost demonic, kind of like dreamlike quality. It takes away from the dreamlike quality to make him even more realistic. We do not want to see a Freddy that we're, basically that's just this is an actual burn victim. There's a whole demonic part to his face. There's a creepy old man aspect to his face in certain, especially in certain films, almost like a dirty old man aspect to it when you look at it. And but the biggest flaw that this movie has is that there is no imagination in the style of the kills. When you have a guy that is a dream killer, that has basically your entire psyche at his imagination, and he comes in and he cuts your throat with his knife hands, you know the movie has failed at that exact point. It also takes the most likable actress in the film and kills her early on, leaving only she's not a bad actress, but she's not as good at carrying the film as the other girl is. You know it's kind of coming because you know the characters' names in the film, but you kind of wish the roles were reversed for a change, and they would have done something original. Would have been kind of neat if they actually let Tina live and let Nancy be the one that died off, and done something original with it. And they hinted at the fact that Freddy might actually be innocent, and maybe he was framed and went to and he actually didn't do anything, which would have been a nice kind of like an edgy way to go with it. That's all thrown out the window about like halfway through when we realize that no, he's just your average like typical perv that wants to take Nancy into her dream, basically put her in her coma where he can basically have his way with her for eternity. And it's a really badly done film, and it takes every aspect that you want to about this film and wastes it. Wastes everything that was good about Nightmare on Elm Street. This is where I'm going to diverge with a lot of horror fans. You're next. A lot of people love this. They consider it a modern day classic. This is a very watchable film. It's not a good film, but it's a watchable film. The acting in it is so-so. The actress is great. The lead actress does a great job. She makes an amazing character. But the film overall, the characterization and most of the leads are a bit of a mess. It's kind of Your Next plays for most of it like a bad episode of Arrested Development, with just a completely dysfunctional family gone to the nth degree. And I know that's probably what they were going for, but it just got annoying to me. I did love the music in the film. I love the way it was shot, and I love the lead character. Everything else was pretty much a mess. The Purge is basically an example of creating a fantastic world and knowing absolutely not what to do with it. This could have been great. It's a ridiculous idea. It's an utterly ridiculous idea, but it's a great idea for a film. And then they make it into basically your basic home invasion film, and it just falls apart from there. Now, jump scares and getting them done right. Two movies did them extremely well, and in the last couple years. They did have jump scares, and they had good jump scares. Why? Because jump scares aren't things that are done by unimaginative filmmakers. They are things that are done by every filmmaker. Jump scares are done in horror films, but not only in horror films. Jump scares are used in action movies, and it's something that's done when it's done well. It adds to the dread that you're talking about. The whole thing with behind,
And after dread, you need a release.
yeah,
You can't just have dread throughout.
you gotta have.
You need a release, and a jump scare is a way to release you and then get you again.
Exactly.
So, works.
You can't have one without the other. Basically, you're making your sandwich. You gotta have the peanut butter and the jelly. It just works together. The jump scare and the dread, they go together. You talk about The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a great example of a movie that uses the dread and lingers it out to get to those big jump scares, to get to those head-turning moments. Does it cheapen the film because she turns her head or because she spits pea soup? No, actually, both of those work together. They're very cohesive in the way that it's done. And the next two films I'm going to talk about are not everybody's favorite films, but they are films that do it really well. And the first one is one that I thought I was going to hate. Insidious. Forget the other Insidious films right now. I haven't seen the third one, but the second one was meh. The first Insidious film, however, does things really, really well. I did not think I was going to like this film, but it brings up the dread and it does things so amazing. There's such amazingness in this film. You see the ghost in the film, and you don't even realize it. You don't even realize it. You're watching this movie. There's a scene basically at the beginning, I think. It's near the beginning, the tiptoe to the tulip scene, where she goes in, she's checking on her son, and we do end up seeing this like little child type ghost type character. However, watch the scene again, and you'll realize that actually, as she's walking out through the hallway, for a split second, you see the ghost turn back on. Just, you can miss it. It's that subtly done, and a lot of people really do miss it, and it's done in a couple places throughout these films. It's not used as a jump scare. It's not. You're not even supposed to really notice it or see it. It's kind of something in the background, kind of like what The Exorcist does, with almost like it's demonic face that he used within it. But this movie has jump scares, very few, and places them extremely well. Things in this movie build, and when you jump in this movie, you jump because the filmmakers have made you jump, because it is something that is scary. It is something that you need. It is built to a point where it releases, and there's actual scary scenes. It's not a cat jumping out at some big-breasted girl that's on Urban Dictionary. It's a scene that literally grabs you and momentarily terrifies you and just puts you right back, and you do not know when it's going to happen again. They don't overuse it. They use it very well in this film. And Dean, if you haven't seen Insidious, you really, really should. This is an actual masterpiece of a film. And as good as Insidious was, this one was a little bit better, in my opinion. I do think that the ending was not as good as Insidious, but a simple clap can become an awfully scary thing. And The Conjuring does it really well. The Conjuring basically takes the whole Insidious line of building up to the jump scares, and bring them in places that you wouldn't expect them. Nothing's cheap. Nothing's done in like a in kind of haphazard type way. Nothing's done unimaginative. If anything, these films are some of the more imaginative films that are out there. Ghost story films are really hard to get right. There's a lot of people that have basically kind of like ripped off and done a bunch of ghost story films because they think, okay, we'll just put a jump scare here. I'll have a ghost, we'll do some, we'll put in some creepy stuff, but it doesn't work that way. It's a genre that really has to be done well. It's like all of these genres. And here's the most controversial one on my list, within this house especially. High Tension. Otherwise known as, well, it was Switchblade Romance. What's another title for this film? Or Hot Tension, if you want to go for the French. This is a genius of a film. And it's one that does bring you in. And it's A lot of people have a problem with the ending of this film. As far as the gore films go and the more brutal type of films go, this is pretty much a masterpiece of that. Yeah. Okay, is that where? When did this come out? 2003. Okay, you've had 12 years, so we're gonna.
Don't spoil it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, don't spoil it.
Just remember this: the killer in this movie.
No,
Actually, it's kind of already done. What a
no, no.
understand perspective when you watch this movie, but when you get to the end of it, understand perspective. Many films in the 80s actually did this. There's a film called Slaughter High that completely makes little sense until you get to the very last frame of the film, and you're like, "Oh, that's what's going on." Does it mean the film's genius? No, Slaughter High is not a genius film, but it makes it a much more watchable film. If you watch this film and you're at the end of it, you're kind of scratching your head like, "How does this twist make sense?" Because it's got a pretty good twist. Um, go back to the beginning of the film, the very first frame of this film, and understand perspective. And when you get that, then you can get high tension. It's all about perspective. It's all about in the eyes of. It's, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. This entire film is in the eyes of, and that's what it hinges on. That's what irks a lot of people, is they don't get that. So they keep trying to find a certain logic to it, and a certain logic to certain scenes. Like, if, oh, this happened, so this couldn't happen, and this couldn't happen. But go back to the very first scene and think perspective. Whose eyes is this all being seen through? Once you get that, you get the film. She doesn't still get the film. She's not a big fan. I left this one last for a reason. It is a brilliant, brilliant film. It was put up by Criterion, so maybe you got it, because you have a few Criterions there, dude. And it is The Devil's Backbone by Del Toro. It's a brilliant little film. It is haunting, and it's set during the Spanish Civil War. It's another kind of a ghost story type, and it does build up the dread, the suspense. It's lyrical in the way that it's done. And I don't want to talk about this much. I just want to say it's something that should be experienced. It should be actually seen and watched. And that is the movies that I wanted to go through. And why did I want to go through them and go through 23 minutes before I actually got into the whole my thought on the state of horror films, modern horror films today? Well, what do I think about the state of modern horror films today? And do I think they're worse than they were when I was? They're different. But are they worse? Honestly, no. Are they better? I want to say no. I want to say that, the days of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Exorcist and Halloween are gone, but they're not. It's as fragment and uneven as it always was. For every Halloween, there was a dozen different movies that weren't Halloween or weren't Friday the 13th even. There were movies that came out and cashed in on other films. So, well, we may tend to look at all the other Saw films as being like, whatever they were, event films that really didn't mean anything. The original Saw film is actually pretty good. When we think about things like Halloween, then we forget there's movies like the French film Inside that takes on a very similar take to as Halloween, and it's kind of like the way it builds momentum, the way that it really puts the menace in. Are there movies like The Exorcist nowadays? The Exorcist was a very different type of film, but there's a lot of different ghost story type stuff. Devil's Backbone, for instance. There's a lot of films that you don't want to draw direct parallels to, but there's a lot of magnificently done films out there. Some people like this and some people hate it, but there's a movie called The Descent, and it's basically about these women that go into this cave, and it ends very horribly. There's creatures in the cave. One of the really cool things that the filmmaker did was he did not let the actors see what the creatures look like before the first scene that they have to interact with them. So there's a scene where everything goes completely black, and then a light comes on, and the creatures that are there are around the actors. So they get an actual genuine reaction of fear from these actors who have not seen it. Now that could have went horribly wrong. There was many ways, somebody could have looked at it, and if this would have been bad makeup or something like that, they could have laughed their asses off. And that would have been like, take two type of thing, but then it's gone. But you have to take that chance. Horror, like many other genres, has been extremely uneven. I think that the worst films that have been done, the ones that's been hurt the most in the last few years, have been the action films. Action films are not at the way that they used to be, in my opinion. Then I see Mad Max, and I'm like, no, I'm all as good with the action film right now. Because it just takes one film to get you, to make you feel pretty good about the state of filmmaking. There's a lot of bad films out there. There was a lot of bad films when we were growing up. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, there's a ton of bad films. People were taking chances like crazy, and people are still taking chances. Just sometimes a lot of those little films are little films. Halloween, for instance, was a little film. It was a little film that just happened to make it big because the studio got behind it. But if it hadn't been, it would have been one of those that just a lot of people didn't know about. A better film than Halloween, in my opinion, is Black Christmas. Black Christmas gets pretty much everything right. And, we know now that John Carpenter pretty much loved Black Christmas and took aspects of that and went further with it and just did an amazing, incredible film that I think is a classic. I think both those films complement each other extremely well and make a great double feature. So if you want to do a holiday horror type of thing. But the same thing works with a lot of films today. As much as I would like to say, I hate a lot of the stuff because people like Rob Zombie go out and remake films, or that horrible remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. People tend to forget, and we look through the stuff with rose-colored glasses. Like our era was the era, or the 60s is the era, or the 70s is the era, or the 80s is the era. And everything has a good and bad aspect to it. Do I think that's gotten any worse? No, I think that I think there's certain films that are atrocious. Now I think that there's certain films that don't belong being made, but that's my opinion. And and I'm sure there's a lot of people that would totally disagree with some stuff that I don't like. I don't think there's any place in filmmaking for movies like Serbian film. I think it's an atrociously bad film. People talk about how beautifully shot it is and stuff like that, but that's not what gets me with that film there. I've talked about this one before, and I'm going to talk about it right now. It's a film that's bad because of the people behind it masking their the fact that if you're going to make schlock filmmaking and you're going to make shock type of stuff, you do it and you own that. Don't BS about political ramifications and all this type of thing and talking about that. No, don't give us that. Own what you're making. Own the type of film you're making. The people that make this stuff and they make it well, the ones that go well, the ones that do well, usually have a love for the genre that they're working in. They understand it, and they understand other genres as well. John Carpenter was, and I still think he's an amazing filmmaker. And one of the things that makes John Carpenter stuff works well is because he enjoys filmmaking and he enjoys film. Here's a guy that more than anything else wanted to make westerns. And Assault on Precinct 13 is a western. But he's able to incorporate a lot of this stuff, a lot of these different styles into his other films. Like in Halloween, he manages to really grasp the way that that sound and that works. And that's amazing. And Rob Zombie is a horror movie director that makes music and cannot grasp the way that sound works in a horror film. But there's so many people out there that can. Dario Argento is one of the more modern day horror directors whose last couple of films, last film especially, Director 3D, was atrocious. And we sat through it. It's hilarious, but it was atrocious. But there's a guy that really understands the way that sound works. The score in it was actually pretty decent. The film itself is pretty horrible. I'm almost like unmaking my case with some of these modern day films there. But there are so many great things out there. If you're a fan, if you're a fan of the old style slasher films, then you got stuff like Wrong Turn. You have stuff like Hatchet. They're kind of like they're fun stuff. If you thought the zombie films were dead, just take a look and see how much the zombie stuff has gone over the years, and stuff like the uh, the Battery, the Conjuring, and Insidious have brought like the ghost story style thing back, and it's kept it in that whole sense of dread, that whole sense of their jump scares are not overused in films any more than they were back in the times of the classic times in the 1980s and the 1970s. You want to see jump scares then? When they talk about the cat jumping out at the big breasted girl, that's pretty much cribbing scenes from Friday the 13th, done back in 1980.
And it was done before by Hammer Movies, and it was done before by Universal Movies, and it was done before in silent movies.
so, so
It's there.
there's so much good stuff. And I know you're a big fan of the classics and gothics, and I do agree that there is not enough gothic horror made nowadays. I would love to see more vampire films that were done well. That is one place where I can totally 110% agree. They have messed up the way that they make gothic films because they're going on the Marvel aspect of let's make them all superheroes. And they're not. I mean, it started with The Mummy way before Marvel even came around. When they took Brendan Fraser and they took The Mummy and bent him over a table and just sodomized the whole Mummy franchise idea. Basically, is what they did with it.
Penny Dreadful is doing
Exactly.
a good job.
That's where TV comes in.
Yeah.
TV has taken up some of the slack on some of the horror. That's what because TV it's different now than it was back in the day. Movies were the way to go. TV was pretty much you'd get like those every once in a while. You get like an ABC movie of the week horror type of thing. But TV was pretty much TV. And movies were movies, and never the twain would meet. Now, however, it's not the same. I mean, you got shows like Hannibal on there, shows that are actually really, literally intelligent. You have series that like Bates Motel that started good and turned into seeming positive crap. But then you have stuff like Penny Dreadful, which takes the gothic style. And Dean, if you have not seen Penny Dreadful, please watch it because I know you will love it. It takes all the classic camera aspects to it and adds it into the show, and it does it well. And I haven't seen all of the second season yet, but everything that I've seen has been incredible. And one episode of every season, they take it to do this kind of like flashback episode. And this is done in the Gothic times. This is not a modern day show. It's done back in the Gothic era. They'll take one episode every season, and they'll go back and kind of like a flashback type of sequence, and it for that episode. And every time they do it, it is an amazing episode to behold. The whole season just works together so well. So if you want to find your gothic stuff, it's there. It's right there, and it's on TV every week. You can buy the season, and you can see just how well it's still done. So what's the state of horror? What's wrong with horror right now? Nothing. It's us and our rose-colored glasses in the eras that we are in. I am an 80s person, and I have a ton of 80s films because that's my era. That's what I love. But to this day, I still try and open-mindedly watch the newer stuff because I still want to get that feeling. I want to get that feeling that I had when I was... And it's so hard because we see different films. We've seen so much nowadays. When we saw these films originally, when we saw The Exorcist, when we saw Halloween, these was our first time seeing these type of films. It was an experience. It was like, oh my God, I'm seeing this for the first time. Does that mean it's going to be the best? To many of us, yes, that's going to stick as the best. That's it. This is our spot. And that's why there's people out there right now that are going to see stuff like Rob Zombie, and that's going to be their spot. It's sad, but true. It's going to be their thing.
So sad.
It's sad for me. But the thing is that there's so many other great films being put out there. For every WrestleManiac, yeah, it's not a good film. There's a Hatchet. For every George Romero's Survival of the Dead, there's a Battery. And for every really horrible ghost story, there's a Conjuring or there's an Insidious. So for every Insidious 2, there's an actual Insidious 1 doing it right.
But the same thing for 80s horror. You go for every one of your Scream Factories or whatever.
There's one.
20 crappy 80s movie horror
and we love them
that
for
we
that.
don't remember.
Unless
that
you're
didn't
me.
make the cut. Well, no, you know that
Yeah.
a lot of them, it's whatever you have here from whatever era that defines you is not just what was made.
Yeah.
For each one of them, there's 100 that were made and were shit, basically.
And I still have those because I like shitty horror films too. Uh,
Well, there's shitty good and there's shitty bad.
Don't Go in the Woods alone. What do you
That's
call it?
shitty good.
Yeah. The Boogeyman.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah. Anyway, so the state of horror hasn't changed. We have. It's the same. It's got good. It's got bad. Sometimes
Bad, bad,
but
and bad good.
bad, and bad, good, and it's but it's still amazing and it's still fun. And as long as you're a fan of films and you're out there to look at stuff and to watch stuff and to experience stuff, you're going to have fun with it. You're going to have times, just like when you're younger, that you're going to find something that's going to make you excited and make you happy to be a film, like watching films again. And then you're going to watch the film and it's going to make you feel like, what's wrong with films nowadays? Why are these films so bad? Why are there so many fan footage films? And I'm like that sometimes.
To me, that's the new generation. You talk about bad jump scares.
Yeah.
All of the Paranormal Activity, they built on that. The whole movie is just that.
What, the jump scare?
Well, it's all that. It's spooky moments.
Yeah.
The plot really isn't.
But with the first one, I gotta say, the first couple of Paranormal, I did actually find them good. I thought that they didn't
They
do
were new.
too much with that. Yeah, that's the thing.
Same thing. Look into the Blair Witch Project.
I didn't like the Blair Witch Project,
Well,
actually.
a lot of people didn't.
Yep.
But that was the whole point too. It's this new thing, found footage
There's actually a movie now
style.
that I gotta see it. That's made with an iPhone, totally with an iPhone. So I'm guessing I'm gonna have to make Matthew watch that one with me because she's looking at me like you can't watch it. But I watched 2 movies today actually. I watched All Cheerleaders Die, and The Guest. And both of those films sound like movies that are going to be completely horrible. And I thought, okay, I'll watch these when my better half's out because they're going to be like pretty cheesy horror flicks. And you know what? Both of them were actually extremely fun and different, like twisty, cool old films. Especially All Cheerleaders Die. I think there were Lucky McGee has done an incredible job on making a film doing not what we expected to do. So if you like the movie The Craft back in the day, and then you want to see what happens if it was twisted on its head and shaken up, and watch that film. So there we go. The state of filmmaking, it's the same. It's good, it's bad, but as long as you love it, as long as you enjoy it.
I don't even enjoy it. I don't even know what I'm talking.
Wait, what film? You don't enjoy film?
No, I enjoy film. I don't enjoy horror.
You watch some horror with me. I get her to watch some horror. She'll be like, I'm not watching that, and then an hour and a half later, she's watched it. She's watched a lot of horror with me, really bad stuff too. I made her watch a lot of bad stuff. But at the time, somebody told me she liked horror films. And she was trying
No, I
to
did
impress
not.
you.
I said I like classic horror.
You did
Never
not.
said horror.
So, no. She did.
No.
She said she liked horror, and she kept watching them. She never said once, like, but I think, no, these things scare me. Or, no, I don't want to watch that. So she's like, no, come on, we'll watch a couple horror
I never
films.
said that.
You totally did. That's why we watched so many of them. And every time, and I did not know she didn't like horror, so every time she was like, well, I said, like, well, do you want to watch another movie? So obviously we watched something that was creepy before. I said, well, that didn't scare her. Let me find something that's scarier. And that's what I did. And she spent a lot of sleepless nights of me not knowing. Anyway, that's a totally different topic. What's wrong with horror films? We're more jaded. We're older. We've seen a lot, so it's harder to impress us. It's harder to excite us, but it's still out there. I like the movie Martyrs. It's a very different film. It's very brutal and hard to watch, but I think that is a great film, and a film that does it right. Human Centipede, I think this film does it all wrong. And it's just my opinion. There's some people who like that type of stuff, but I'm not one of those people. Then again, I'm not a Faces of Death guy. I'm not one of those type. I did like a lot of the gore. I like Society. I thought it was an amazing film back in the day, and it's still fits today. Will all these films be classics? And well, uh, 10, 20 years down the road, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what's going to be a classic. Will Hatchet have the same appeal down the road that Friday the 13th will? We'll be remaking that. Uh, I don't know. What's going to be interesting to see. As it is right now, it looks like there's going to be more Saw movies being made. Like they're going to remake that one. They're going to be remaking a lot of the Child's Play stuff. Well, remakes and reboots tend to be the thing. And I would like to say I totally hate that. What a horrible idea. But the 80s were built on remakes and reboots as much as you and sequels. That's what it was. And a lot of the best stuff that came out were remakes. The Thing and The Fly are two of the most fantastic films that came out of that generation, and they're both remakes of films. Philip Kaufman's 1970s Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a remake of and almost a sequel in certain ways to the original Body Snatchers, and it's an incredible film. There's ups and downs in each, but for me right now, I've talked for 41 minutes on this. So thank you, Dean, for such a great topic. I love your video, by the way. It's just so well done, so well thought out. Mine is very much off the cuff, like I do. I am the gonzo journalist of YouTube. So here we go with say hello to the great Pin Lord in the sky, his buddy the Phantom, his friend the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I had an amazing time making this video response. If you have not seen Dino DVD's videos, you should really check them out. He does some amazing stuff. He's great and very eloquent with his with the way he talks, which I wasn't. See that total opposite of eloquence? That's what he is. He gets that eloquent thing there. And he did a really great video that has a lot of great points about things that are wrong in horror today and things that aren't right. I guess I wanted to come on with my more my cheer optimistic type of attitude type of thing. But don't worry, I will be on to rant about other things when I watch the next horror film that totally just gets my goat. But for me right now, my teacup is empty, and after talking for this length of time, I really need the tea. So it's time for tea, and go over and check out Dino DVD's videos. I'm going to put a link into his oh my god, it's been like 42 minutes and I'm like totally blanking on everything. A link to his channel down below. Thanks for watching, and I am out of here.